What is up everyone, it's Wizard101 with another Wiz video for y'all. Today I'll be ranking the schools from worst to best in terms of solo ability and overall difficulty. All these schools are kind of relative to each other except for maybe the bottom 2 or bottom 3, so number 4 won't be significantly worse than number 1. Before we get started, I just want to say that 80% of you watching aren't subscribed, so please make sure to hit that button if you enjoyed the video and my other content. And with all that being said, let's get right into the ranking. Now coming in at number 7, we have the School of Balance. Now I put Balance at last place mainly because of the fact that their blades are objectively worse and they don't have any prism, so beating a Balance boss is never a fun experience unless you have a snappy griffin that gives you Lunarian Hydra. Your blades are also universal, which makes it very hard to remove things like weaknesses, but without also removing your blades. Balance is the balanced school, which means that you can't really excel in anything and your stats end up being mid when compared to other schools that specialize in their own kind of fields, I guess. The other schools all have something they excel at, while Balance just kind of excels at being mediocre. The good things about Balance are the 7-pip AoE Power Nova as well as the single target spell Judgment. Without these two spells, Balance would be legitimately unplayable. Balance is also an amazing support school. Your universal blades make you an asset to your team, but also relegates Balance to nothing more than a buffing bot in group settings. I recommend Balance if you either want a challenging solo or if you want to support your friends in a group setting. I would not recommend Balance to new players, but if you have a max or two and want to give Balance a try, I would recommend it. Slightly better than number 7, we have number 6, which is Ice. Quick disclaimer that the wizard I'm using right now is not an Ice. Ice is the only school I don't have at a high level, so I'll mainly be relying on my game knowledge from playing the 6 other schools as well as what I've heard from Ice mains as well. Ice used to be the definitive worst school in the game, but the Frost Giant change put it slightly ahead of Balance in my opinion because Ice actually has a school identity. Ice gives you high health and high res, which makes it harder to die. The downside is that even with the Frost Giant buffs, your damage is still severely lacking. Ice heavily relies on shads like Snowball Mirage in order to do significant damage, and even then their gear doesn't give them a ton of damage, especially in early and middle game. Ice, like Balance, is a pretty good support school and has often been used as a tank in group settings, meaning that they try to take all the damage and buff others in the process. Ice used to be borderline unplayable until the Ice community went out and started a movement to change Frost Giant basically. I would honestly not recommend Ice to new players just starting out because of how slow it is to play through, and if you want damage you might have to use different gear sets throughout the game. Like I know that some people have to use a mix of Waterworks and the level 50 Mali set, which can be confusing to newer players who just want to get their gear from one place, which is Waterworks. And overall, Ice is in a better spot than it once was, but still far from the best. At number 5 we have Life. Life was actually the first school I made in the game, but is far from my favorite. Life is basically Ice, but better. It can heal, it has high health, and it has high res. By the end of the game, Life can actually surpass Ice in health and almost equal in res, which kind of throws off school identity and the whole concept of it, but that's where we are with the game. I'm going to be honest with you, if you're choosing between a Life and an Ice, you should 100% choose Life because it's just objectively the better school. The main reason I put it so low on the list is because I'm a bit biased and I like to see big numby, big damage on the screen, which Life does better than Ice, but not as well as any of the other schools, to be honest. Being able to heal yourself and your teammates and actually have those heals kind of scale with your gear as it gives incoming and outgoing is really good and something that other schools can't really say about their gear. Life is a slow questing experience, especially if you don't craft or have the spellments to get rat spin, but I wouldn't exactly call it all that difficult thanks to the great defensive stats and heals it has to offer. If you like to support, then Life is either the best or the second best in the game depending on who you ask, and even though there are better schools to start off as, Life is a solid option for the first school. At number 4 we have Fire. Some may be surprised to see Fire not at the top of Wizard101's list, but looking at it objectively, Fire is just slightly worse than the schools remaining on this list. That doesn't mean that Fire is a bad experience. Personally, I think Fire is a great solo experience because you have slightly more health and res when compared to Storm, and you can still do solid damage. Where Fire falls short is its 7-pip AoE, which is a DOT, meaning that the initial hit is weaker than that of even Frost Giant. The first shadow spell it gets fire from above was also reduced to Ash when they nerfed it a few years back, turning it into a DOT, and even Raging Bull has received nerfs to its damage, which makes me hesitant to put it over the other schools. Overall though, Fire is a great experience and you could get through the game very quickly if you know what you're doing. you get a great 4-pip AoE and a decent 7-pip AoE, which is honestly all you need for questing. And at the very least, KingsIsle made an attempt to fill the gap left by Fire from Above with S'mores. Fire is a great choice for people just starting out in the game if you want to have high numbers while getting more leeway compared to Storm in terms of dying and fizzling. I would highly recommend it as a first or second character. Fire isn't in as good of a spot for PvE as it was a few years back, but it's still very respectable and is one of the better schools in the game. At number 3 we have Myth. While Fire has gotten a bit worse over the years, Myth has gotten a whole lot better, especially with changes to the 7-pip AoE they have Orthrus. Their viability in PvE has skyrocketed. Myth is an amazing school with one of the best 7-pip AoEs in the entire game and solid damage to boot. In terms of damage, it's a bit harder for Myth to match up with Fire and Storm, but where it fails in those aspects, it makes up for it with their superior health, resist, and accuracy. Myth is basically what Balance could have been if it was just better. Myth has great stats in every category, as well as amazing utility when it comes to removing shields. It also gives you really good Pierce, as it's meant to be a Pierce school in the Rochambeau wheel, which is essential if you want to complete Novus and especially Wallaru. Myth's single targets are also really good. Baba Yaga does a shit ton of damage, Basilisk is goated, and spells like Minotaur have a nice little mechanic where you do a small hit first to remove shields and a bigger hit after the fact. You may have heard of Myth being the minion school in this game, but that is inconsequential. Never use a minion in this game, they are utter garbage. Overall, I would recommend Myth as a first character if you're interested in the school, and overall is a very fun experience, and it's very beginner friendly as well because of their stats. At number 2 we have Storm. Storm is the big numby, big damage Wolf Stormblade school. It does the most damage in this game by far and is a breeze to quest through. The majority of the game you'll be using the spell Tempest, which gives 80 damage per pip, and when you get enchants, the spell really ramps up in power. You'll get amazing shads like Glowbug Squall, Sound of Musicology, and Rusalka, which are some of the best spells in the entire game. The downsides of Storm are low resist, low HP, and low accuracy. This is what stops Storm from being the best school in the game, especially in worlds like Azteca. You'll need to kill very quickly and you can't make many mistakes because every turn counts. Storm is a double-edged sword. If you know what you're doing, like what gear to run, what jewels to socket, and you have a good pet, Storm is a very straightforward, fast, and fun to play. If you don't know what you're doing, however, Storm is certainly not the school for you, and if you were a new player, I would place it at number 5 on this list. I recommend for everyone to make a Storm at some point in their Wiz career, because it's honestly one of the most fun schools to play in the entire game. Some of my fondest memories on this game were just me breezing through Khrysalis in the entirety of Arc 3 in like 2 to 3 days because of how fast Storm can be if it's put in the right hands. Now at the number 1 spot, the best school in the game, I doubt many people are surprised, it's Death. Death was my first max actually in Empyrea, and in my opinion is by far the easiest and most accessible school in the entire game. You get decent damage, good resist, decent health, and you also get drains. Now drains are the most OP mechanic in this entire game, and as long as you are using semi-decent gear and you have Crow, you will not die. Starting out without an AoE can be rough, but Shiba Fools, Scarecrow, and Lulu make the game a cakewalk once you get access to them. Death is also a good support school with spells like Juju used in strategies to cheese OP bosses like the original Triton, and also spells to deal with weaknesses like Dark Pact, which shakes off weaknesses and blades yourself. Is there anything else that needs to be said? Honestly, this school is so OP that makes PvP borderline unplayable if you're playing against it. Death is very beginner friendly, and if I'm remembering correctly, it's the most popular school in the game, so I would highly recommend making a Death Wizard if you want a smooth and easy experience. With all that being said, I hope you all enjoyed the video. I want to hear what you all think in the comments below, and I want to know your rankings and opinions. Consider leaving a like or a sub if you watched the video to the end and enjoyed it, and have a wonderful rest of your day. As always, I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.